Got.
No, summertime.
Oh, we gotta fix them now. We switched them around now. Africa's at the top.
I didn't write
at the
my
bottom.
What was that due today?
I'm rewriting mine.
Kinda, yeah.
I'm still like.
Did y'all do the English work?
I did. I just fill out the paper though.
I thought that
Like I have
was
like one
Monday.
of the bullet points.
No, she's
Well,
gonna
it's-
grade it Monday, but
Yeah.
this is like a trial run, quote unquote.
I did not. My aunt gave me the book
I don't even know how to
Sunday.
do my speech.
Still.
Nisha, I'm changing my speech.
Where does Lane go?
On
She
the
talked
day
about
of-
Miss White.
Oh, okay. About
Anyway, we need to pick up where we left off yesterday. We were talking about Hydra.
I got a I was wondering if I could have somebody. No, I got any truth though.
Pardon me? I will be
Yes.
if you don't read it in class.
Okay, here we go. We were talking about the structure of Hydra, so we're moving on to the feeding process of Hydra. So remember that Hydra has tentacles. It's basically like this open sac. It has a mouth at the top, and it has tentacles. Well, these tentacles usually are just dangling in the water, okay? But they are lined with stinging cells called cnidocytes. These tentacles are lined with these stinging cells, and they will just line all of their tentacles. Okay? Now these cnidocytes produce something called nematocysts. All right, so this only occurs in this phylum, by the way. It does not happen in any other phylum of animals. These stinging cells, the stinging cells of the cnidocytes that produce these nematocysts. Now these nematocysts, many times what they are these capsules that have like these little poisonous barbs in them. Sometimes though it can be more like a thread or a long sticky thread, sticky substance, but many times it's like these little poisonous barbs. You can think of it like a little cyst with a harpoon ready to strike. So they have these tentacles and they're just dangling in the water, waiting. When something comes near it, what does it do? So when their food source comes through, the prey, whatever it may be, a small invertebrate, something, brushes against the tentacles, and this poisonous barb is released, and it pierces that substance, and usually is stuck, it's paralyzed, or it's trapped, the food substance that it's eating. So it stings.
Dobson.
Yes.
It's kind of a random question, but you know the active chemical in like pepper spray?
Do I know the substance? I don't know what it
Well,
is.
I know. Okay, no, but I don't know. Like it's a huge word, and I don't know how to pronounce it. So I'm gonna say PG.
Yeah, if I could read it, I could pronounce it. I don't know what the name of the substance is.
I can't recording this for the whole day, so that YouTube world can hear all my great comments and I'll become an Insta star.
No.
What's that?
We already have
Do we need a pun challenge for while we're being billed?
That would be real like you have the past 5 times.
I don't appreciate that.
I do. Truth hurts, I understand.
All right. Anyway, so the prey brushes against the tentacles. It is now paralyzed. And what does the hydra do with it? It draws it toward its mouth. Now, where's its mouth? Remember, it's at the top, right? The very top of it. So it draws it toward its mouth and eats the food. It doesn't really chew. It just puts it into the mouth. Because remember, then it goes into its open gastrovascular cavity where digestion occurs. the prey is trapped. Now, most hydra are little tiny things, so they're eating even tinier things, so just be aware of that. It's not like this huge creature that's preying on giant sharks or something like that. It doesn't work that way, you know?
That's a lot cooler.
Although that would be interesting. But, you know, most hydra are like less than an inch tall, so they're little tiny things.
We found something shorter than it. Hey!
Evans is taller now.
He's taller than me. I'm
He
the
is.
shortest in this class, yo.
I know, but I still like making jokes.
Sorry, I can't tell. I'm up in the class. I can't.
Not the worst, but Evan said.
Okay, so the food is forced into the cavity, the gastrovascular cavity, which begins digestion, extracellular at first, meaning that the cells will secrete the enzymes and it will start breaking down the food substance outside of the cell. Once it gets partially digested, then they will be absorbed or engulfed. The smaller particles that are left will be engulfed, and then digestion will be completed intracellularly. Yes?
What is it? Sorry.
Put them on my desk. Okay, that'll work. Thank you. You're welcome.
Oh, I miss biology. It's so much better than chemistry.
I don't.
I teach
I teach
yeah,
chemistry. It's challenging.
Hunter
It's
showed me
gotta be
chemistry.
all, you know,
It is hard
I like that.
stuff.
I'll stay here.
I don't
It's a lot of memorization, isn't it? Is it pretty much just memorization? And applying.
It's a lot of application. Anything that is indigestible, so any waste material is then, once again, needs to be get rid of so it goes back through the mouth. There's only one opening in a hydra, and it's its mouth
Wait,
at the top.
What goes back to the
Waste.
mouth?
Yes.
They have taste buds?
No.
That's good.
So these stinging cells, once again, I want to point out that they're only found in this phylum Cnidaria, although they're not only found in hydra. Does anyone know of another sea creature that can sting?
Jellyfish. Oh wait, no,
Fish,
that's
that is
not-
correct. What else?
See?
Think Finding Nemo.
Sting.
Oh,
Where do the clownfish live in?
Anemone.
Anemone. That's right. Sea anemone also has these cnidocytes. So you only find it, even though the hydra's not the only one, there's a few creatures that have it, but it's only in this phylum of animals.
Interesting. What is that next?
Okay, and also just adding this, excretion and respiration, they don't have any structures for those. That's all accomplished at the cellular level because their cells are in very close contact with their environment.
Shoes are so loud.
There's like 2 or 3
I'm talking about football hot dogs.
It looks like a book, but it's just a case of hot dogs.
Okay, let's move on to responses and reproduction of photographs. So remember we talked about the sponge. Sponge didn't do anything, right? Didn't really respond. The hydra can respond, as we've already seen. They can feed their tentacles, they respond to touch for their prey. And they can move, but that's because they have a nerve net. That is what makes their reactions and their responses to stimuli possible. It will respond to food, like I said, it uses its tentacles for that and draws it into its mouth. If you touch a hydra with something that it doesn't like, it will roll up into a little bit of ball. So these responses are possible. The nerve net, yes, is just this network of nerve cells and fibers that extend through the body. It doesn't have a brain, and then nerves that go from that. It's a, just a series of these nerve cells and fibers that extend throughout its entire body. And it can coordinate its movements that way. That's what it allows for. It allows it to feed more efficiently or to move if it needs to. If it's in an area that is becoming too harsh for its living, it can move. And these impulses travel through its body and it can respond that way. Unlike the sponge. Reproduction. Once again, there is both asexual and sexual reproduction. Just like with the sponge, asexual reproduction, two of the same that we talked about with sponges. It reproduces with budding, which means a mass of cells that grows on the original, and then eventually starts to look like a little mini hydra attached to another hydra, and then it will separate. That's budding. Regeneration, meaning you can cut it into pieces, and the pieces will each regenerate into a new hydra. So those two are the same. It doesn't form the gemmules. That was just a sponge. Sexual reproduction also occurs with hydra. Usually a different time period than sponges. Sponges sexually reproduce in the spring, whereas hydra usually reproduce sexually in the fall or the winter. Usually there's only one type of gamete per hydra. The ova form in ovaries, and then the sperm forms in testes, but only one type per hydra. The ovary, the ovary actually, the ovum breaks through the body wall. It doesn't leave the hydra, but it makes this opening basically in the body wall so that the sperm can swim from another hydra, swim to the ovum, and then fertilize it, form the zygote. Eventually the zygote it undergoes a few divisions, and then it becomes this mass of cells that gets covered and coated in this protective coat, and then that will separate from the parent and be dormant during the winter. That's why this happens in the fall or early winter. So it's dormant for the winter period, and then in the spring it will break out of that protective coat and be in the hydra. Okay, so that's it for the hydra, but here's a diagram so you can see what it looks like. Tentacles with the line, the cnidocytes, and there's what the nematocyst looks like. See how it looks kind of like a little mini harpoon, basically. Has nerve cells lining it, that's why it's able to react. But there's the hydra. All right, moving on to the jellyfish. Now the jellyfish are in a different class. They're in class Scyphozoa. Most jellyfish have a 2-phase or 2-stage life cycle. One of the largest jellyfish measures up to 6.5 feet in diameter.
That's a lot of feet.
That's a big jellyfish.
We've seen in, I don't know what in the world they were, I guess they were some sort of jellyfish, but out when we were deep sea fishing, they're just like these blobs. They were like pink kind of color.
Oh
They
yeah,
look-
he disappeared.
They look so different from like, I don't, they
Is it
didn't have-
jellyfish or it's not like a massive algae or anything?
It didn't have the normal jellyfish kind of shape, but you could see the tentacles like floating in the water everywhere. I mean, they were massive, like huge, these giant blobs of like, I don't know, they're the most complex looking things underwater. And the water, the whole entire like ocean was just filled with those tentacles. If you were to jump in, you'd probably would not make it. It was pretty terrifying.
What do you think would be ready for that?
You know, those things are scary, big.
Yeah, I don't know what that would have been.
I was down on day one.
What?
But it was on the surface, kind of like a Portuguese man o' war.
No, it was a bit under.
I mean, I know it wasn't a Portuguese man o' war. Those are,
Yeah, those aren't that big.
yeah, but it was similar to that, where it floated close to the surface.
It was like, I'd say it was good maybe 2 feet under.
Oh, okay.
It was weird.
What was
Just
it?
strange.
But maybe it was a type of jellyfish.
It is very
It was the weirdest thing. But there were tons of them.
Yeah.
Like they were
But this is way out.
way out, like miles out. Or starting.
It comes on to
All right, so the first stage we're going to talk about is the Medusa stage. The Medusa stage is what you think of when you think of a jellyfish. Okay, that's the free swimming stage. There are male and female jellyfish. I didn't talk about, but you know, the Medusa stage has the tentacles, right? Those are stinging. They still have the nidocys, with the nidocytes, sorry, with the nematocysts and the stinging cells. You can get stung by jellyfish. But the males release sperm just into the sea, and the sperm swims into the female, into its cavity, its gastrovascular cavity, and fertilizes the ovum. Once the ovum is fertilized, remember that it's a zygote. The zygote will leave the cavity, but then cling to the oral arms, or what we call the tentacles, of the female. So it doesn't stay in the cavity, the zygote. It clings to those oral arms of the tissue tentacles. They're called oral arms because, you know, they hang around its mouth. Its mouth is down on the undersurface. Unlike a hydra, which is the mouth is at the top. On jellyfish, the mouth is on the bottom. Eventually, the zygote grows enough to become a ciliated larva. Cilia, remember, are not as long as flagella, but they still aid in movement. And it will swim away and attach itself somewhere. It's not a very large structure. It forms a polyp at this point, and it's only, it says 12 millimeters in length, so it's very small, only a centimeter or so, a little over a centimeter. But, so it attaches itself, and it goes into the polyp stage, and it can survive and produce more polyps for several months. So at this point in the polyp stage, remember we mentioned this earlier, when there was a two-stage existence, the medusa stage reproduces sexually, whereas the polyp stage reproduces asexually. So the polyp stage reproduces by budding. And this budding, as long as the conditions are favorable, it will bud and produce several new polyps. Basically, and it's hard to describe. You'll see a diagram, you'll understand it. You know, like when you stack saucers for cups, and they have like a cup and saucer. So these polyps kind of look like a saucer. Because it like constricts around it and it starts to look like stacked saucers. And then each of the saucers, or the new polyps, will break off and become a medusa. So it doesn't, once the polyp is formed, it can produce more polyps by budding, but under the right conditions, it will produce medusa creatures. I'm sorry, were you not done?
No, I'm almost done. It's fine. You can go ahead. I have Zach's right here.
Oh, okay. Anyway, I want to show you the diagram and try to explain this a little bit more. So you have the medusa free floating, so you have the male and female jellyfish. Sperm swims into the female, fertilizes it, produces the larva, which eventually swims away and becomes a polyp. Similar, it kind of reminds you of a hydra there. But that can produce more polyps, but eventually it undergoes, when the conditions are right, it starts producing medusa. See, that's what I was trying to describe, like with the saucer shapes there. But each of those little saucers becomes a medusa. And so it cycles through the life cycle like that. So the medusa produce polyps, and the polyps produce medusa, and so it's like an alternating life cycle.
Jellyfish.
That was a jellyfish. Okay, and the last class we're going to talk about with this phylum is class Anthozoa. Class Anthozoa are thought of as the flower animals, because really the name of the class, that's what it means, is flower animals.
Does that say water?
No, under.
Under what?
Okay, the first one are corals. Now, when you think of corals, a lot of people think of not the little animal, but what it secretes, right? You think of coral reefs, and you have the Great Barrier Reef near Australia that's also secreted by coral, but those reefs that are left behind have been secreted by little tiny animals called corals. They secrete that. It's like their little skeleton. They live in the little skeleton area, but if they get eaten or it dies off, then it's left behind. The little outward excretion is left behind, and other animals can live in that coral reef. Then there's sea anemones, which we mentioned before. The sea anemones can sting. They usually live on the floor or they attach themselves to objects. They do have tentacles. Oh, that was all I mentioned. Corals and sea anemones.
I'm so tired.
What time is it?
We do have a Spanish test to study for.
And the Bible one.
And I'm trying to decide if I'm going to go ahead and give you the quiz Monday.
What are you talking about now?
Why would she?
Why would I ever do it now?
It's like, all right,
Miss
quiz
Dobson,
you.
come on.
It would be
Our pop quiz.
Monday.
Yeah, we should do that because I can study over the weekend. Because I probably would do that.
Let's do the quiz review. That's good. Then
I'll
we'll stop after that.
Yeah.
So you are going to have one homework question, and then also the quiz.
All my highlights.
Is that it for the slides?
Yes.
You had left is now
That
one.
Wait.
I'm usually good about catching up. I thought I was going to catch up today.
So,
But you must be today.
stressing us.
Okay, so this quiz is going to be over 15B. So it's not over 15A, which was the introductory material. 15B is what we've been talking about the past 2 days with the peripherans and nidarians.
Let's do it again. You're welcome again.
Oh yeah, I completely forgot about the Bible test.
I forgot both whenever I was studying before this.
I didn't even look at the book.
No, you have to know like
Have a verse for every-
Oh yeah,
Wait, do we have a verse? Yeah, we do.
It's Mark 11.
23,
Any of y'all
24.
know it, like actually?
I do. Just because Guy kept yelling
Yeah, I know
at me
most of
every
them.
single time I got it wrong.
Honestly,
Yeah,
I don't know
sure.
Spanish. That's the one.
That's for
Oh,
sure.
we
I did not
are,
study
and
for
that's not our
Spanish.
fault.
I
First the verses.
I was on my phone with my aunt.
All right,
You
anyway,
need to take that to Miss Bartle.
here we go. So this is 15B. In your notes, what you're looking at is where we started with phylum Porifera and Cnidaria, phylum Porifera and Cnidaria, okay? So do know that the sponges are in phylum Porifera. Sponges are in phylum Porifera. Also, with the sponges, make sure you know the name of the jelly-like layer that's between the two cell layers. It is called the mesenchyme. This is under the structure, okay, under the structure. The mesenchyme is the jelly-like layer that separates the two cell layers. Make sure you know the amoebocytes are these cells that can transport food throughout the sponge because they are freely movable, but mostly they transport food. Yes, they transport the food. Make sure you also know that a sponge is supported by a network of spicules. It's supported by a network of spicules. Remember, this will come up again when we review over the hydra stuff, but you need to know the two methods of asexual reproduction found in both the sponge and the hydra. Okay, that would be budding and regeneration. That's found in both the sponge and the hydra. Budding and regeneration. Okay, under the hydra, make sure you know what phylum they belong to. Hydra belong to phylum Cnidaria. Okay, phylum Cnidaria.
Wait, what one was that?
Hydra. There's others, but that's the one, that's the question on the quiz about the hydra. Okay? Make sure you know the cell layer that lines the interior of the hydra, okay, performs digestion. It's called the gastrodermis. it lines the interior and primarily performs digestion, gastrodermis. So then there's the reproduction again in Hydra, if you want to highlight it a second time. Those are the two methods of asexual reproduction in both the sponges and the Hydra, budding and regeneration. Make sure you know the medusa form of the jellyfish is the one that reproduces sexually. The medusa form reproduces sexually. Oh, I forgot, go back. About the Hydra, you need to know that the Hydra's tentacles are lined with cnidocytes. Those are the stinging cells. The cnidocytes, this is back in the Hydra, sorry, I skipped it. And the stinging cells, or those cnidocytes, produce nematocysts, which are the poisonous barbs, capsules containing poisonous barbs. So the cnidocytes are the stinging cells, and they produce nematocysts. Okay, and that was it for the quiz.
About food and gastroenterology or something like that.
Oh, it's right near there. It's the inner cell layer, the lining of the gastroenterologist. It's called the gastroenterologist.
This you need to make they reproduce sexually.
Okay. Right, the medusa form, don't forget that, the medusa form reproduces sexually. Anything else anybody missed? So there is one review question, okay, one review question on page 351 as well for homework, and then study the 15B material for the quiz. And that's it. All right, I'll read stop the camera.
Well, stop, stop, stop.
Okay, you got it.